Hi everyone, I'm Yashvir, and welcome to our audio channel, The Bro Code. So, what's this channel about? The name suggests it's about your typical bro code, rules followed by guys, right? But this runs deeper than that. I guess we wanted to discuss how we have grown through life and how various situations have shaped us. By the means of the podcast on this channel, we hope to say something meaningful and impactful that perhaps you can use in yours. So please join us in this inspiring journey. We hope it helps you in some way.
Okay, so the reason why I wanted to do a role reversal today, um, for Yash to actually be the one that answers questions while I asked him, was because I think it's time he tasted his own medicine, right? Uh, no, kidding. So basically, I think Yashir has been on a very um, difficult ride uh, through a lot of his years. And I think that he has a lot of insight that people can use. And I think if we're going to try and help people as much as we can, it's nice to always have not a practical example, but a practical understanding, you know. And I think that's very helpful to people, or that could be very helpful to people. And that's why when I was sitting one day thinking about, if we're going to help people, how can we help them the best, and maybe using examples or explanations of the way people speak to themselves and use their inner voice and their inner mind to help them, then maybe people can do the same thing with themselves. And there's a lot of questions that I thought of that could help, but I think that it's always helpful to have a view on things that someone has gone through and you can use as a tool, right? So I titled this Me, Myself, and I because I've got certain sections in here, and there's about 5 or 6 sections, and one is called the inner me, one is called my inside power, one is called the hidden path, one is called the lonely road, one is called the defense, and one is called the offense, right? And not offense, but offense, like attack, right?
Mm.
Because we don't want to offend people. But yeah, so I'm gonna start with what I call the inner me, right? And when I say me, myself, and I, it's all about questions that are internal, right? So, having been through all the experiences in your life, um, how do you speak to yourself in a positive way? And what are the techniques and tricks that you have found that really do help you speak to yourself in a positive way continuously, right? Um, I think maybe just let's see what you would put to that.
Okay, so to start off, I was never one to kind of um, speak to myself at all in any given situation. Whenever you're faced with problems, um, I never used to kind of internalize or just rationalize or kind of figure things out. Um,
Mm,
I also always used to go to the negative mindset and kind of
mm,
straight on that path. So I think once I started um, picking up these positive affirmations, or through, I guess my journey started when I went to therapy, right?
mm,
And I started working on myself significantly, putting more time into me. Um, and I actually got not only therapy, but also an international mentor as well.
mm.
So I don't think I mentioned this in the past, but I was on the Anthony Robbins program. So that
Okay.
whole that whole mind power journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me started to shift my entire mindset from a negative one to a more positive one. From then on, I started learning about how you speak to yourself
Mm.
kind of influences not only your day, but also your future. So if you speak to yourself consistently in a negative way, you kind of just head down a negative path. And if you speak to
Okay.
yourself in a positive way, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, it's not carry. I was just
Yeah,
saying,
and if
okay.
you speak to yourself in a positive path, in a positive light, um, then your day starts off right. So one of the first things I do when I get up in the morning is as soon as my alarm goes, I give myself 5 seconds to get up. I think we discussed in the past before
Yes, yeah.
about this whole 5 second rule thing that I
Mm.
employ. 5 seconds to get up, immediately out of bed, and the first thing I do is smile. And now that might sound very weird
Mm.
to anyone, but that whole smile, and as I smile, I take in a deep breath. That whole smile and that deep breath gives me a certain energy shift in the morning.
Okay.
So I shift my energy already from being this relaxed into a new energy which is like more vibrant. So
Mm.
that smile and that deep breath moves me into that to start my day. So that's the first thing I do to kind of shift my energy level. Um,
Okay.
and then
That's
I
good.
then I yeah, and then I say obviously the next thing that I do is I give thanks for the breath that I just took. Immediately afterward, I give thanks to the breath that I just took because, as we know, not many people have the privilege to wake up every morning.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's your normal routine, right? I make
Mm.
my bed because I start my day off with a win. Making your bed is a win, as we've discussed in the past as well. Make my bed, um, and I'd say an affirmation. I go to the bathroom and I say an affirmation in the mirror. It's like um, one of the things that I do as well. This might sound weird, and I say I thank myself for always getting up and trying my hardest for that day or for the previous day as well. So I speak to myself and say, "Thank you, Yash, for doing so and so." Um, and I love you, Yash, because you woke up another day and you're ready to give everything for that particular day. So that's my morning routine to set my mind up and to set my day up and to speak to myself in a positive way to set myself up for that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually really helpful. I think there's a lot of people out there that it may sound weird. It may sound not um uh natural, right?
Yeah.
But in doing these things, what I found that you're saying is that you create a habit, right? And the habit is not to form these things that you're doing specifically, but the habit that you're creating is a mindset.
Yes.
And I think that is very helpful to people because once you create that mindset about yourself, you view yourself that way, and then you create this aura around you, right?
Hmm.
And it's how the law of attraction works. You attract positivity towards yourself.
Yeah. And
And I think,
and to extend that further, like I don't always feel a particular way, right? I don't always just gravitate toward a centered and peaceful state. I mean, there are times where um, you kind of lose control and you tend toward a particular mindset and a particular feeling. So then
yeah,
I also have another control to help me get out of that. Once again, I
mm,
give myself 5 seconds and I actually use um, a physical shift for me. So I give myself 5 seconds and I snap my fingers. So the moment I snap my finger, that means I want to trigger emotion from whatever state I am in to emotion of peace and happiness. So let's just say I'm feeling
okay,
sad. And I know that's not my natural state. My natural state is centered, peaceful, and happiness.
mm,
I give myself 5 seconds and I start snapping my fingers. On that second snap, my sadness, I kid you not, I have been able to, as you said, train my brain to a point where
mm.
when I hear that second snap, I'm out of it. I've
It's
moved
habit, right?
myself to a better state now.
Yeah, it's a habit that you've created,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
within yourself. I mean, we all have good habits and we all have bad habits, right?
Hmm.
Some people just have a lot more bad habits than they have good habits,
Yeah.
right? like junk food and not making their bed in the morning. I'm not one of those people that naturally gets up to make their bed in the morning, right?
Hmm.
I make it after I finished showering and all that stuff, right? Um, but I'm one of those people, right? Um, and that actually leads to my next question. So you've explained that you have this habit formed where if you're in a negative space, right? So because naturally, no matter who you are, there was always going to be a negative self-talk or a negative view or a negative aspect that you're seeing, right? And I mean, we all go through it. Like you said, we all do have angry spouts, or we all do have times when we snapped, or sometimes when we feel like we're not going to make it that day, or it's not going to be a great day, or you know,
Hmm.
and you don't always meet the target every day. I mean, if you met the
No.
target every day, you'd be like friggin' John Wick, right? Um, but how I think a key, and you've sort of answered one of my questions, but I think a key of what you've said, and I think that's something that could really help people is how do you notice when you're in a negative spiral, right? And that's not always simple. Like you can pick it up because you notice your energy level. Your
Yeah.
energy level is sinking, right? And
Yeah.
that means that you're not naturally in a positive state. But
Hmm.
how do you get to the point for the viewers out there that or the listeners out there, how do you get to that point where you know that you're naturally not in a positive space, right? And how do because it's not a thing where you can see yourself in the mirror, you
No.
have to
No.
feel it,
Yes.
right?
And I think the
And
key word
sometimes,
there is, I think the key
yeah,
word there you mentioned
mm,
is feel. You have to feel it.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah,
like when you, okay, let me just give you an example, right? When you feel angry, what do you feel? Okay, when I get angry, my face turns red and I feel hot.
mm,
And I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that when they get angry.
mm.
So that
So
physical
yeah,
feeling is one of the identifiers that I kind of notice within myself.
okay,
Um, so that's how I trained myself initially. So when my therapist and I were discussing how I used to deal with my emotions and my moods, she would kind of get me to um, recognize these exact same physical indicators. With anger, like I said, it's this redness in my face and this heat that builds
yeah,
up from within me. With
yeah,
sadness, with sadness, there's this overwhelming. When I described sadness to her, whenever I felt sad, there was this overwhelming sweatiness in my palms, and for me, it was a dry mouth, and for me, it was the sinking
mm,
feeling in my heart. So the
mm,
overwhelming sinking feeling in my heart, that was the second
mm,
trigger for me. Um, and when I felt anxious, when I felt stressed, I used to pull my hair out
mm,
and um, literally pull my hair out, really.
mm, mm,
So that was the third thing. So they were physical things for me that I identified, or my therapist helped me identify um, to know when these particular state changes were happening.
sure,
And then once you recognize them, you can always change them to what you want them to be. And then she
okay,
gave me the tools to kind of help me move toward those. Now, this physical trigger is just a physical trigger, right? It was just
sure,
something
mm,
um, to to say, okay, cool, for my brain to recognize that it's time to move from one state to the other. I think initially she asked me, what would be the funniest thing that you can think of? And at that time, it was the remake of It the Clown. So it was
okay,
It that was out at that time. And for
mm,
me, the thing that I thought of when I was speaking to her, she's like, okay, think of something that's funny to you. And because It the Clown was out at that time, I thought a clown. And so my initial trigger was thinking about It the Clown to move me to a new state. And then I came up with the snapping of the fingers instead of
okay,
It the Clown.
mm,
So that kind of trigger to move me out to another state evolved. So if I had to give anyone an advice, it's start by noticing how you feel physically, because that's
mm-hmm,
something tangible. Like it's not something abstract like an emotion in your mind. It's so think of something tangible that happens when you feel sad, when you feel anxious, when you feel stressed, when you feel angry. So start with
mm,
those key emotions that kind of happen to a lot of people.
mm-hmm,
So note your physical changes, write them down, and then that helps your brain realize or recognize that, okay, when I feel internal heat and my face goes red, that's my anger happening right now. Then your
Okay,
brain is
so
going to say, okay, yeah,
that's actually a really good point. So I think that having that example of you understanding the way you feel when something happens and recognizing that there's a change in from one state to another and then trying to label that state, the next time and the consequent times after that, you end up learning what angers you and what triggers you, or what makes you sad and what triggers that, and what
yep,
uh, anxiety and what triggers that. And then you can learn. I'm not saying it's going to work perfectly for everyone, but um, you can learn uh, deal, how to pre-recognize those states within yourself, and then you can always learn to move to an easier state or
mm,
learn to deal with it that way. And I think that that's a huge step forward for a lot of people. And then obviously creating a scenario for yourself where you can actually snap out of it's not going to be the easiest for everybody. I think for you having to do that and getting to a point now where you can do that quite easily shows a lot of willpower and a lot of determination. But
I mean, a person would
yeah,
has to want to improve themselves and has to move
exactly.
in order,
Yeah,
in order for these things to work.
yeah.
It's like we always say,
Um,
you can't wish for better but stay the same.
yes,
You
exactly.
have to
Um,
put in the work for to in order
you
for
have to
this
change,
to work.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So that brings about something else because that will strength, right? And that willpower basically brings me to the next topic of what I
yeah,
call my inside power, right?
yeah.
And the question around that is how do you manage or how do I manage my energy levels and um, how do I recognize the energy levels of those around me, but also um, from a point where um, there's always surpluses and deficiencies. And how do you manage your energy levels in that regard? You know, because obviously everything's about your inner energy, right?
Hmm.
So how do you manage that for yourself, or how do you manage your energy levels specifically?
Okay, so um, first of all, you only have a certain amount of energy per day
Hmm.
um, to perform whatever functions that you have to perform for that particular day.
Yes.
And I only give out or share energy or release energy into a task or into a group of people, etc. If I see that is something worth doing for me. So I'm not going to give a person a time of day if they don't, if they're not, um, I would say, engaged on the same level as I am. I'm not going to share part of my energy with that particular person. It's just not worth it for me. I know that sounds
Okay.
bad, but it's more a something to do with me than them. I'm preserving my energy. Like I said, I only have enough for a day to get me from 24-hour day. And I'm not going to give it out unnecessarily. That's not being selfish. That's just being cognizant of me.
Okay.
So yeah. So that being said, there are different situations that you can put yourself in where you have to share your energy. I would say, like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there's work where you have to concentrate and give some of your energy there, and then there's social environments where um, you interact with people, and then
Yep.
people bring a different dynamic as well. So you asked, how do you
Mm-hmm.
identify um, like levels in people, and then
Mm-hmm.
engage with them, right? For me, it's because I'm at this point now where I know myself quite well. I
Mm-hmm.
know who I can interact with that's on a particular level. I'm able to decipher um, a person's energy level and engagement level. Um, so I think I might not be the best person to kind of describe this, but it's just happened over time that if I engage with someone, I just get this I detect their aura first,
Yeah.
and if that aura um, kind of interacts with my own on a positive level, then I will share my energy and I will engage with that particular person. But if that aura for some reason doesn't sit well with me, um, it's not something that I'm gonna. It's not. I won't engage with that person. So it's. I can't describe it
I think
that
it's more of a
well.
gut feeling, right? You get a gut
Yes, it
feeling
is like
about
an inner.
somebody.
It's like inner
Yeah,
feeling, really. Like for
yeah, no,
example, I always tell
yeah,
people when you go into this path of inner engineering, um, it's not about like this whole religious thing or whatever. It's just clearing a path from your internal self to your external,
yeah,
so they're able to communicate better. And for
mm,
me, like when I'm with people or in a group or in any situation, really, it's just that that channel has opened now, such that it communicates better, and it's telling me that this is not a situation that I want to share my energy um, at this time. Yeah.
no, that's pretty much the best way I would have understood it and explained it. I think another question in that avenue would be obviously what are the challenges that you faced with learning about your energy levels, you know, and how did you find that the best way you could have was overcome them? It doesn't really have to be like a an explanation of massive sorts, but I think you know at some point when you're learning about inner engine energy and energy engineering, you know, I'm using engineering loosely here, but
Mhm.
you know that whole inner engineering as you're explaining it, inner development. Did it take you long to figure out how it worked, or was it more of just a gut feeling sort of thing, and then you adapted it as you went?
Okay, so for me, it was over time
Yeah.
that I started realizing that it was um, an an inner connection that was trying to speak or trying to
Hmm.
make a connection to the outward world, I would say, or have a voice in the outward world. Initially, like you mentioned, it was like a gut feeling.
Mm,
And as you like I mentioned, I went through this whole coaching thing with Anthony Robbins, and
mm,
I had a lot of these self-help books and followed a lot of these channels, um, these ancient mystic channels, whatever.
yeah.
And a lot of those topics and methodologies that they used spoke to me. So I'm going to describe one methodology right now. It wasn't like it's not meditation. Meditation came
Hmm.
after for me. Before it was just sitting in silence. Now
Okay.
that's different to meditation for me. Whereas meditation, you're trying to have this peace in your mind. Sitting in
Hmm.
silence is just sitting with yourself. And what that did for me when I sat with myself for about 6 months. So I had a dedicated time to do this. I sometimes did it in the morning as soon as I got up, or I did it in the evenings where I would just sit with myself. I wouldn't, like, it's not, like I mentioned, it's not meditation where you trying to quieten your mind or things like that. This was just sitting with
Hmm.
yourself, not doing anything, and letting your mind go where it needs to go and do what it
Okay.
needs to do.
So
So that,
you let your mind sort of run.
yes, I did let it
Okay.
run, but that also taught me something as well. So it taught me that, like, as much as my mind wanted to think about different things and go different places and things like that, it eventually said, okay, you just want to sit here. I'm just going to let you sit then. So that's what it culminated to. That's like after that 6 months, that's what happened for me,
Okay.
where my mind was just not in play anymore, and then finally, it's like I guess my inner voice kind of just came through afterward. So it was a long process for me. So it initially, like you mentioned, it was a gut feeling
Hmm.
until after I realized that it was just an uh, my internal persona wanted to come out.
Okay. So that's actually, I think that's very helpful for people who are trying to understand the whole meditation, um, you know, sphere. And there is a difference, right? When it comes to self-awareness and meditation and understanding your inner being, but also understanding your mind, right? And I think what you realized at some point was your mind has become a tool that you
Yep.
can use.
Yeah,
And
you
your
mentioned
inner,
that
yeah,
many times. Yeah.
yeah, and your inner self is more of your self-awareness. you know.
Yeah.
So as you said, your mind has decided now that you just want to sit there quietly. What's actually happening is that level of self-awareness is now, okay, Yashvir is sitting quietly now, you know, um, and his mind is also, the mind is now obeying, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
that inner level of awareness and that inner voice comes out. And I think that's something that's, it's not natural or it's not necessary for everyone to have. There's different people, but when you start exploring that side of yourself, you find that there's a level of serenity within you that can't really be pierced from the outside. Um, and I think that that is something that, if like you found it, is it gives you so much more strength, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
I
that's
mean,
very cool.
and not everyone
Yeah,
is, like you said just now, is meant to do what I did. I did it because
yeah,
I wanted a holistic view of who I was, because
yeah.
I wasn't particularly um, happy with the way I was. So I want to
Sure,
understand myself completely, and this
sure.
is why I went and did a hell of a lot of things to
Mm,
understand me.
of course. And look, that's the journey of self, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I called it the the um my inside power,
Yeah.
right? Um, okay. So now that you have this level of understanding of yourself, right?
Hmm.
There's what I move to next. Sorry, what I call the hidden path, right? Because you start with the inner me, right? So you find the inner me, and then you find your inner power, right? Then moving on from that, you find your hidden path, right? And the hidden path isn't a place or a specific direction, but it's more of, if we look at some of the lines of, like, say for example, Charles Bukowski, right? He'll
Hmm.
say, do something, do what sets your soul on fire. I think it was him or somebody else who said that, right? But my question would be, how do you or someone find what it is they're passionate about, you know? And how do you do the things that you specifically, or find the things you specifically want to do? Not necessarily need to do, right?
Hmm.
Not necessarily have to do, but want to do and find the things that you're passionate about. Understanding that passions change, right?
Yeah.
Um, how do you find that path and find that direction, you know?
Okay. So with my particular degree, right, which is computer engineering, we were all about um, technology, let's just say. And um, I think for the first few years of my professional career, I was extremely passionate about technology. I really loved getting nitty gritty down
Mm,
to the hardware level and doing that sort of stuff, right? So
mm,
that it's like Charles Bukowski said, that set my soul on fire. I was always eager to get up in the morning and get to work and tackle the next problem. Then down the line, like you say, passions change, things change over time. I had realized that I perhaps had surpassed where I once was. Now, because I had surpassed and grown beyond that particular point, the level of fulfillment in that current role wasn't there for me anymore.
okay.
So you notice that. I mean, a lot of
Mhm,
people will notice that a sense of fulfillment is not there for them anymore. Um, and so then that changed for me. So then I grew into uh, loving um, being able to design a solution or being able to build a solution. So
okay.
that still is with me right now, in terms of passion. Like you give
Mm,
me a problem and my cogs already start turning because I'm
yeah.
so uh, en- like enthralled by wanting to solve that particular problem. So
Mm,
um, like my initial passion, um, I would say I was lucky that it was exactly what I studied. It was what I always
sure.
had envisioned wanting to be that
mm,
technology person. So initially, it was a perfect fit for me. And like I said, over time, I outgrew that,
mm.
as many people will. You get
Yeah,
to a point at any particular area in your life where you um, become so. I mean, you've grown so much in that area. Now that it's just not something new.
yeah.
It's still the same old something bland, right? You always want to change it up and get to that something exciting. So to find that passion, you gotta if you're not as lucky as I am, that what I first had done was the best thing for me at that point. You got to try different things.
Okay,
You got to try as many things as you can to find what will inspire you to get up in morning. What will what you can't be away from. You know what's keeping you up. Something that's so good for you that you kind of stay up at night trying to figure out things.
yeah,
And that's how I was for those first 5 years when I was with my first particular company. I was that excited about doing things.
okay.
So try as many things as you want to, and see which one of those um, gets you really excited every day to do.
Okay, so
That's
that's
kind of
actually,
how a
yeah.
person can find a particular passion. I mean, it's not
Okay,
about
so
failing. I mean, I didn't even
yeah,
mention that. It's just about trying as many things as you can.
okay. So so I kind of couldn't agree more. Just to clarify, it was Jennifer Lee that said that. Now, by the way, I didn't want to don't want to misquote the wrong person in case somebody else comes after me. And the quote is be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire."
Right,
But
right, right.
just to clarify, but I think your point there was quite valid, especially in the way that you explained that you were always somebody that enjoyed solving the problem, but that is sort of a symptom of your passion. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say it that way. Um, and it's not that your passion is not there; it's still there. I think it's grown in a form where you now know that you enjoy finding solutions to things that naturally mentally tax you, you know. And for some people that's the same, but for some people, I think the way you said it was your passion is something that you can't really get away from, and you don't want to get away from. And I
Hmm.
think that that's very key. And it's very nice to find that. And the way I wanted to structure that question was for people. And my next question was obviously, how do I find my path? But I think the way you've explained it is probably ideal, where you say, you know, um, try different things until you find what you can't stop getting away from, and do it until you can't anymore, and then find something else. And that is, I think, ideally how passions are driven, right? So I think that would lead naturally to the next question or the next section, which I would call the lonely road,
Mm.
um, purely because it's the most difficult path that we have, and it leads more to once you're on your path, once you found your path, or once you're on a path, specific doesn't have to be your specific passion, but um, to get to a stage where you've gotten to, you obviously have to have drivers and goals and direction, right? But how is it that you structure your goals to meet the targets that you want to meet, right? And I think that's the first part of my question. Um, and the second part was, um, what are some of the challenges? Not, you don't have to go into a specific one, but what are some of the challenges that you would face when you have goals and in trying to meet those targets, and sort of how did you overcome them? Because uh, it's a nice example for people to understand that you've had troubles along the way. I mean, nothing's always been sunshine and roses. Um, and you've always had goals for yourself that you've set. But how
Yeah.
did you overcome the negativities, and how did you keep to those goals? And that, I think, is something that's nice for listeners to learn through.
Okay. All right. So the first part is understanding what's your why. Now, in order to get somewhere, you have to have a reason to get to that place.
Mm.
And I always say, and Anthony Robbins also, if your whys are not strong, you are going to be weak in
Okay,
getting
but that's
those
fair.
into
That's
getting
fair.
that. So you
Yeah.
have to have a strong reason, strong enough reason to want you to move from point A to point B and then from B to C,
Mm.
um, as your first step. So for me, my whys were the following. My whys were, I did not like where I was. I wanted more for my family. That's a typical one, but that was true for
Yeah.
me. Um, and I wanted more for my future generations. So those are my three whys. And
Okay.
those three whys are very strong for me. Now, it might be different from person to person. Your whys may be different, but
Mm.
those are mine. Now, the first one that I wasn't happy with the way I was, that motivator speaks to growth and internal growth and moving me forward. The second one, family, wanting to do more for my family, means I need to be able to better provide for them,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And then, and the third one kind of speaks to that as well. So my whys were very strong up front.
Okay.
I got very clear on what those were.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I had a long list, right? So I think the Anthony Robbins workshop kind of asks you to list your top 10 whys,
Mm.
and then you
Okay.
write those down, and then you whittle that list down to like top three, basically,
All right.
which I
Okay.
kind of did. I think I only had five. I couldn't even get to 10, but I only had five, and then I whittled it down to three.
Well, that's okay. That's
Yeah, I
fine.
know, but I mean, I whittled it down to the three strongest ones for me.
Mm.
Okay, so then that's the why. And how you go about actually achieving any one of those things is you need to um, figure out what's the mechanism to get you to those places. So for me, in order to improve my self growth, I realized for me it was self help. It was taking the actions, um,
Mm-hmm.
and getting like into this whole mentorship type program. So that's what I realized for me. I need to
Okay.
do. So it's and likewise for providing more for my family and being catering more for the future.
Mm.
That was creating a financial well-being sector for myself.
Okay.
So educating myself on that front, which I guess
Mm-hmm.
also is something that people would like to do as well. So
Mm-hmm.
the mechanisms there was taking financial classes, getting more up to speed with how wealth management worked,
Mm-hmm.
and starting on a journey of becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner. So, because one income stream isn't, I would say, well, for me, I've decided for myself, is not something I want to live with for the rest of my life.
That's fair.
So, that was the mechanisms. So, self help classes, being mentorship, taking the classes to become more financially aware. So those are the mechanisms. Now the plans were um, actionable, so things that you could action immediately. So in any one of those things, I took the mechanisms and I said, how can I get into this right now?
Mm.
Um, so for my self help, I said, okay, cool. I'm immediately registering for a Anthony Robbins, mentorship program, things like that. And I paid for it at that instant. So,
Okay.
and I think how I kind of got to that was that in his book he says, never leave sight of a goal without actually taking immediate action toward it.
I think that's
Um,
important.
yes.
I think that's actually a very important note. If anyone is making notes, um, what you say there is quite um, it's very unsettling for people to have to do something instantaneously. But I think the way that you said it and the way that you did it instills the commitment.
I mean, I know I'm advocating a lot for Anthony Robbins here, but he has a lot of good sayings. But so do
Yeah,
a
no,
lot of
sure.
sort of other people. But
Yeah.
he also says, we also kind of put things off, right? So the reason why you take
Exactly.
immediate action toward a goal or a plan, if you
Mm,
can, well, you
mm.
should, is that he always says the road to someday leads to leads to a town called nowhere.
Yeah,
So
true.
if you say I'm going to someday do this, I'm going to do this
Mm,
tomorrow, you're never going to do it.
yeah,
So you always take that immediate action toward a goal or a plan that you want to move toward.
yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely something that you, it needs to be noted that that commitment is actually vital because when once you start a commitment, you move in that direction. You start the ball rolling. I think that's important. Um,
Yeah.
but say for example, you started the ball rolling, and I'm sure that you have had scenarios where you started the ball but then dropped the ball, right?
Mhm.
Um, and how do you get yourself up again?
Okay, so I think specific examples that I can use were particular entrepreneurship goals that I had for myself last year.
Mm,
That I needed to have certain things up and running by particular timelines, I would say, and that didn't
mm,
materialize. Um, but because it didn't materialize, it wasn't that I was disappointed um, or broken by it. I
mm,
had built myself up to a mental state such that I'm going to go and hit this with everything that I can, and I did for about 4 months, trying to get this idea to materialize and trying to get some investors on board and things like that. I hit that with everything I had for 4 months. I gave it everything, and it
mm.
fell over. Um, but I wasn't deterred by that, not at all. For me, in particular, in business, you have to realize you also have to have thick skin, right?
Sure.
You need to
Yeah.
understand that things are going to fail. Ideas are going to fail. People are not going to like your ideas. People are going to ridicule it
Mm,
and stuff like that.
mm,
Um, so I was mentally prepared for those. Um, and I think that mental preparation, I mean, it culminated in that mental preparation, right? But
mm,
um, all the therapy that I had gone for, all the mentorships that I had gone for, all the online classes that I had done and put myself through, made me ready to deal with failure, made
okay.
me ready to deal with rejection and things like that.
Mm,
Um, and as soon as the next idea came, I was up and running again.
okay.
There was no, I wouldn't say there was a downtime or there was sadness or anything in between, because there wasn't for me. It failed. It failed. I picked myself up and I moved on.
Okay.
So
So
that's
it's
that was
more.
that process for me. I mean, so it wasn't
Yeah.
like, it's just that because I'd had the tools before, having done
Yeah.
all of those things,
Mm.
I was ready.
So you found it very easy to overcome failure, very easy to overcome whatever rejection that you saw. Um,
Yes, I mean,
and
it's not it's like I don't view rejection or failure as abject failure as most would. I
mm,
always see it as an opportunity. Like failing at something is an opportunity for me. Failing isn't that just means it's an opportunity for me to be better next time.
okay.
You
So
know,
it's more
that's
of
that's the mindset. I mean,
yeah.
that's the mindset that I always go with. I
Mm,
mean, like you
mm,
always say that I have this positive mindset, but that's an example
mm,
of it for anyone listening out there. It's like
mm.
it's an opportunity to be better than you were yesterday, and you
Yeah,
must take
sure.
that opportunity today.
Yeah, yeah. No, of course. It's a mentality of I either win or I learn, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, okay. No, that I think is something where you find that the way you deal with things is it changes when you started looking at things that I either win or I learn versus I won or I failed, or I
Hmm.
won or I lost. And that changes the way you operate really because everything becomes a learning lesson,
Yes.
even in victory,
Yes.
So the next thing that would move from there is everything that we've discussed at this point has become internal and how you drove outwardly from the inside, right?
Hmm.
How you found how you find yourself, how you find your power, how you find your path, how you find your direction, how you set your goals, how you overcome fear, how you overcome failure, and
Hmm.
then how you drive forward. But remember, in doing all of the things that you're doing, there still are external forces, right? And that's where I have some of the two next topics, short ones, but um, one I call the defense and one I call the offense, right? And let's start with defense. How do you protect yourself from outside opinions and their effects on you? Because remember, we're people, right? And everybody has an opinion of us, and everybody has their own ideal of us, right? Um, and it's very easy to understand how you would deal with this when you have this sort of strength within yourself, right? But the other aspect is how do you notice that effect on yourself? Because it's very important. Everybody has an opinion of us, including our parents and our friends, the people that we trust the most as well. And those are the people that have the most power to hurt us, right?
Yes.
So how
I
do
was
you
just about to
notice
say
that
that.
effect?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you notice that effect on yourself? And how do you learn to say no to the things that you don't want, even though the external force is coming from either close by people or far away people? You know, when I say close by, it's the close people to you and
Mm,
the far away people from yourself, obviously people that their opinions don't necessarily always matter to you. I
yeah.
know it's a lot of questions in between, but I think the answers will lead in those directions, you know?
Okay. So I guess one of the things that I'm going to describe this in two ways. The
Mm.
first was before, how it affected me before I went on my own journey, and then I'll describe it afterward.
Okay,
So
so Yash and
before,
Yash 2.0, basically.
yeah, yeah, 100%, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So the version of me, like Yash, let's just say,
Mm.
the weird version. When there were opinions laid on me, or when there were external forces that kind of influenced me,
Yeah.
um, it was, I think it influenced me in a large way. Whereas um, I would actually gravitate toward um, believing what their opinions were of me.
Okay.
Because I mean, like you said, right, the closest people to you often have the greatest effect, and that's true. Like
Yeah.
sometimes your greatest enemies are your closest friends. Um,
Sure.
there's that saying,
Mm.
can have the potential to be your greatest enemies.
Mm.
But it was the opinions I took to heart, and it kind of, in some ways, if they were negative opinions of me, it kind of ate away at me.
Yeah.
Um, So I could say that I was a bit depressed basically from that.
Mm.
Like it did drive me to a bit of depression.
Mm.
Remember, you internalize these things,
Of course.
and when you keep thinking on them, you keep reflecting on them,
Mm.
you rationalize that, wait, could this be true? And then you make it true.
Mm.
Um, I think it's important to say that the more you reflect on something, um, or someone's opinion that you kind of make true,
Mm-hmm.
it'll manifest in reality,
Mm.
and then you become that thing that they're opinionated about. um,
Yeah.
so before, opinions used to affect me deeply, to a point of mild depression, and then afterward, Yash 2.0, here's the thing: a person's opinion of you is not a reflection of you, is not a true reflection of you. um,
That's true.
um, and it's, you have to realize that, I think like you mentioned on a few of the previous podcasts, there will always be people who um, have opinions of you, people who will judge you in particular
Mm.
ways.
Mm.
um, but like I just said, it's not a reflection of you, it's not a reflection of who you are. And it's it's just their understanding of who you are, because a
Okay.
person can only understand from their point of view.
Yeah.
They can't understand from your point of view. But it's needless to say, I always, it's always a catch-22 with me. When someone kind of judges me or throws an opinion at me, I part of me wants to correct them, but the bigger part of me knows that it's not my responsibility to correct someone else's opinion of me. Um, it's their opinion, fine, they can have it, but I'm not here to correct your opinion of me and your understanding of me. As long as I am 100% happy of who I am, as long as I understand myself thoroughly, I'm happy. The world
Okay,
can
and how do
decide
you
what it thinks of
notice
me.
how do you notice that effect on yourself? Because remember that it's still going to have
Yeah.
an impact on you for however short seconds it does.
Oh, yeah. No. Okay.
How do you
So,
notice that?
with me, um, I would say before it was deep internal conversations with myself.
Sure,
So
sure.
when the times when you're alone, when you're like in the shower or when you're like getting ready for bed and you're trying to
Mm-hmm,
sleep and things,
mm-hmm,
you kind of play your day over
mm-hmm,
um, right before you do those things. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But for me back then, I used to play the day over in my head, um, and I used to reflect deeply on these things. And these things used to kind of keep me up for quite a while.
mm-hmm,
So I noticed I used to have actual conversations with myself, just like, okay, this person said this about me. Um, I was told I was a shitty engineer or whatever,
mm-hmm,
um, and I used to have those physical conversations with myself. Um, so that's how I used to have it then. Now, it is more of, okay, this person has said this. I acknowledge that this person has said this, um, but it's not a reflection of me, and I am going to let it pass now. So it's still okay. It's still a conversation with myself in both cases,
mm-hmm,
but one
mm-hmm.
conversation ended up in negativity, while one conversation ended up in positivity. Um,
Okay,
one conversation says, "Okay, I acknowledge that this was said, um, but it's not a reflection of me. I am now moving forward, and I'm letting it
okay.
go."
So in both scenarios, you'd still notice how it impacted you
Yes,
because you would feel some form of negative energy coming in that
in
direction.
your way.
Obviously, you'd
Yes,
feel
yes,
it in your
yes,
chest. You'd be aware
yes.
of that
Mm-hmm,
feeling within your chest. And I think it boils back down to feeling. You know,
mm-hmm,
everything everything in that environment is feeling. So whether you feel within your gut, your heart, or your head, you'd feel that negativity, and then you at this point would now decide that that is something that you're not going to let affect you, right, or
yep,
impact you because
mm-hmm,
that is their vision of how you are. And I think that's very important for people to understand that, as you said, that line is very key. Other people's opinion of you is not your opinion of you. You need to decide your own opinion of yourself. And other people's opinion of you is just that. It's just their opinion. And they're welcome to have it. But it shouldn't change the bearing of your life. And it should not control the bearing of your life. And I think that's something that's very important for people to understand, especially if it's someone that's very close to you.
mm-hmm,
Because you know that a lot of people are controlled by the things that people that are very close to them say. And I
mm-hmm.
think you have to sort of have that level of independence, but also understand that you don't need to be attached, but can be attached if you want, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I
You need
mean,
to have some level of
yeah,
attachment, but you
mm-hmm,
don't need to be attached to the point that they impact your life in that way.
yes,
Um, and I
definitely.
think that's important for people to understand. And the last thing I would say is remember that anything external can go in but also come out,
Mm-hmm,
right? And how you view the world now compared to before, um, you've become a more internal person than an external person, you know? Everything happens under the surface now, and only anything that happens outside of the surface is something that should impact positively, right? Um, where you can. But how do you learn how to project your ideas in situations, right? But how do you also overcome the fear of inactivity, right? And that I think is something that's very important because when you become a very internal person, you also learn that there's not much activity that you need to actually make happen for things to happen, right?
yeah,
And there's also this thing where people have a fear of activity to get to what they want, you know? So there's a level of, I have this calm personality and a positive personality, but also you need to have this is life, right? So you need to have some level of aggression to get to the activity that you want. And sort of overcoming a fear of inactivity. And I think that's something that's a big question as to how do you um, overcome that that fear of inactivity to drive yourself positively in the direction that you want.
look, so I have this very confident self image of myself. I'm exceptionally confident, um, and sometimes maybe it's borderline arrogance as well. But I portray myself as a very confident character in any situation. And like you say, I am also very internal.
Mm,
So how do I project this now? This
mm,
confident self in my conversations or in any situation. Um, and I like what you say as well. It's that if you don't have anything positive to say
mm,
or positive contribution, um, then you shouldn't really say it. And that's part of what
mm,
my reactions are nowadays anyway. Um, I don't. I tend not to give feedback if it's not going to be positive. In
mm,
some instances, maybe that's not true. Maybe during heights of rage, that goes away.
mm.
But
But you see,
I
that
tend,
creates
yeah,
it creates a level of fear of activity, if you know what I'm
yeah,
saying. You know, you
yeah,
become this person that only wants to output positivity.
yes.
But how do you instill in yourself the action to um, project or to outwardly project when is necessary? And that I think is an important factor because a lot of people just give their opinion, you know.
Mm,
But as a person who only wants to give positively outwardly, there's also times when you need to give neutrally outwardly. And there's
yes.
always a fear of that fear of inactivity or that fear of activity. And I think that is something that it may be a little bit further down the line, but when I call it the offense, I mean, how do you outwardly project so that you get the result that you want? And I think
Um,
that's sort of
so I
the
mean,
question, you know?
yeah, I mean, I choose my engagement levels.
Mm,
I choose when I want to engage, when I don't want to engage. And that's pretty much it for me. Like if in any situation that I don't want to interact with anyone or interact in any situation, I don't have to. Like I can pull myself out at any given time and just be
mm,
like, completely silent in any conversation or any situation. It doesn't
mm,
matter to me if I don't see anything in it for me in terms of engagement level, in terms of energy, then I
mm.
just don't engage. It's
Okay.
it's not worth it for me.
Mm,
So I don't think there's a fear of inactivity. I don't think there's a fear of not getting the outcome that I want. It's just I realize on the outset, do I need to be part of this? Yes or no? And if I don't need to be a part of it, that's it. I'm just silent. I'm just not active. So
okay.
that's
So
kind
you
of
look
how
at
I deal
yeah.
with things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you look at it situation by situation and gauge your level of activity to meet what you think the best outcome would be in that case.
Well, for me, what the best
Yeah.
outcome for me would
Of
be.
course. Yeah.
Remember, I
I mean, you
mean,
can
like
only
I
make
say,
it
I
in your
mentioned me
situation.
because I'm not being selfish here. I'm not trying to be um, self-absorbed or whatever. Remember,
Mm,
it's all about do I want to engage on this energy level? Yes or no.
mm,
Is it good for me? Yes or no.
mm.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, look, I think that for me is uh, in terms of what I would want to ask, those are the questions that I would need to because um, the way in which you have developed this yourself, not this, but yourself specifically, has it, it, is is a way that takes a lot of introspection, but if done well and with not necessarily with guidance, but with assistance where you can, it allows people to be a lot more self-strengthened. Um, and as you say, people might view it as arrogance, and trust me, I've also been called arrogant before. But there's nothing that you can really there's no need to do anything about it because you know within yourself who you are and what you are. And I think to develop that side of yourself and get to that level of yourself really does take a lot of work. And I think that insights into that is definitely beneficial to people that not haven't or still on that path, but also can learn from that. And I think this is why I wanted to ask those questions because it's very difficult for people to actually see how it's been done or understand how it's been done. But with a little bit of introspection, it's good to open those doors for people to see that it's very possible to do that. Um, and I think that's why these are the questions that I wanted to ask. So I think what you've done is quite tremendous, especially in the time that you've done it. I mean, uh, for me to get to that level of understanding took a good solid 10 years. Um, and I never really had any assistance. I mean, going through limiting beliefs and stuff by yourself is quite difficult, um, especially when you don't have any idea what they are in the first place. But
Yeah.
to have to learn what it is introspectively and then spend the time with yourself and learn about yourself introspectively, it's a lot of work. And I think, I, yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for answering those questions because it's not easy and it must have been a difficult path, especially looking backwards. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you humble me by your words there. Thank you. But yeah, it was a difficult one. It wasn't like with any journey. There's
yeah,
blood, sweat, and tears involved all the time.
it's not
Even
a battle
now.
every time. Yeah,
No, it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. But it's a continuous journey. I mean, we've mentioned many times through our previous podcast that life is always a continuous journey.
yeah,
You move in inches, as our first podcast was, and you keep
yeah.
you keep moving in inches. Even now,
Mm,
I'm still consistently taking on this self help journey.
mm.
Um,
Look, it never
my
ends, right? It's
No,
always
it
another
never
lesson.
does. It never does. There are always
Mm,
grand new ways of improving oneself.
mm,
You know,
mm.
and like now I'm entering this business mentorship program as my new thing, one of my new mentorship
Okay.
programs that I'm
Mm,
undergoing right now. Just to get that side fully up and running. Um,
yeah,
so there's aspects of my life and goals and dreams that I've been making a reality and taking steps
yeah,
toward, moving toward. So
yeah,
it's always change. It's always looking to be better than you were yesterday,
yeah.
but for yourself
No,
and not for anyone
definitely.
else. Let's just say that.
No, look, yeah. At the end of the day, remember that all the work that you do for yourself is for yourself. And you
Yes.
can do as much as you can to help others, but if they don't do the work for themselves, you're never really going to get to
No.
where they want to be. Because you
No.
can get them to where you want them to be, but that's not going to be where they want to be,
No. Yeah, I
Um,
think we both love Matthew McConaughey's. There was that graduation speech, and then there was
yeah,
the
those
Oscar
13
speech that
points
he.
or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was actually
So I
quite,
think
I think it's about 45 minutes if you ever get the chance to watch it. It's
please just go
quite
listen to Matthew McConaughey talk
phenomenal.
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Um,
those very good.
it's very nice.
Gives you a nice outline.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. I think that's definitely something that was worth discussing. I think.
Yeah, I know it is. It is.
Mm.
It is a very engaging conversation,
Yeah. Um,
and I
it
finally
it
got to
helps.
feel what it's like to be on the other end.
Yeah, it's a lot of talk. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it is.
and it's a lot on the spot. You have to think
Yes.
quickly.
Yes. Yes. It
Yeah.
is. But I mean, when you
But
do think
it's
on the spot, it's you speak from when you're speaking from experience and when you're speaking from your life. It's not really speaking
yeah,
on the spot. It's just speaking from your experience and just
yeah,
pulling that particular memory and just speaking on it. I guess
yeah,
which is what we always do here. I mean, the listeners don't know. It's not like
yeah.
I give Prash the questions beforehand. It's
Mm.
on the fly. Um, I
Yeah. If
ask
I
and
gave
he
you
has
the
to
questions
answer.
beforehand, if I gave you the questions beforehand, it would have been too easy. You know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we create a sense of realism just by um, the interviewer having the questions
Yeah.
and the interviewee
Yeah.
just have
There's a
to
lot
shoot in the
that you
dark.
don't discuss. Like there's so
Yeah,
many things about self growth. Like even in this topic that we discuss
yeah,
now, it's like there's a lot of self growth that you have to look at yourself and to develop things like awareness and um, overcoming just limiting beliefs on their own is something that like I struggled with for such a long time because I didn't think to like Yash to go get help or assistance or anybody to like you know anybody that's been through it before. So you have to first understand that the things that you want are the things that you want, and then the things that other people want for you and the things they want you to do are not something that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to fight that battle on your own, oh, you know what? To fight that battle, whether you're fighting it on your own or by yourself or with help or not, is still not an easy one because sorting the emotions, whether you label them or not,
Mm.
is still a difficult task, right? But labeling it, and that's the key thing, I think, with everything in life, when you learn how to label stuff, I'm not talking with a label maker, but label it in terms of what it means to you, it reframes it instantly in your mind so that your mind understands it holistically, right? And when you do that, you find that it becomes a lot easier to chew on. And I think that's something that's very key for people to learn. I think that's something that taught me quite a lot. Labeling things for what they really, really are all of a sudden helps with a lot of different situations. It turns as they say, complexity is only complex because it hasn't been simplified yet. So
Yep.
labeling things helps with the simplification of complexity.
And you know the tools that we have now available to us, online, um, has also been an incredible help.
Mm,
So when certain people in my um, life related to me, I guess, required assistance with identifying their emotions,
mm,
I told them use an app. And there's a particular app that I use um, that has it structured. Like, what emotion are you feeling right now? What were you
okay.
doing to, you know, at the time that you're feeling this emotion? How long did this emotion last? So it tracks. It kind of, one, is therapeutic. Two, it gives you a tracker um,
Mm,
as to when these emotions are happening, how they're happening, um, and then later on, it's for you to figure out why they're happening.
mm.
So the tools that we have available to us these days are amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
there's actually quite a lot of stuff
yeah.
that you can use. I think it's very informative that you can have some level of emotion logbook.
Hmm.
I don't know. Um,
Yeah, it is a logbook basically.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I could prescribe to that because I go through so many emotions in a day. I'd probably end up just sitting and writing on the laptop all day.
I mean,
I'm one of those people that's an emotional roller coaster all the time. I'm like that.
mm,
Sometimes it's like anger to happiness in like half a second. I'm just like that. But
yeah.
it takes a lot of introspection to become like that because you sort of have to. You don't dwell. Um, because what I found is dwelling really, really hurts the, the emotions
Mm.
and
I mean,
it
you
builds
brood,
the
right?
ego.
You can't be
Yeah,
brooding.
yeah, and dwelling really develops the ego, which is something that you don't want to spend time doing.
No, no, not a
Yeah.
chance.
Mm.
To you listeners, thank you so much for listening in to our rambles at times, and we hope you gain some value that you can use in your life. So this is your bro code signing off. Have a powerful day. Until next time, cheers.